The signal began 5 days ago. Low, pulsing, and buried beneath known frequencies, like a heartbeat no longer tethered to a living thing. Those who listened too long began to change. They spoke in bursts of static, their eyes wide with transmission. The towers weren't here before. They rose overnight from fractured ground, humming with heat and surrounded by fog that chokes the breath and distorts time. Now the sky flickers and pulses, and everyone can hear it. The voice that isn't a voice, calling from beyond. We thought it was a broadcast. We were wrong. It's a summons. The central spire, levitating, impossibly ancient, not built but grown, has become the eye of something buried deep beneath the crust, something vast and unspeaking until now. The concentric waves spreading outward aren't just signals, they're thresholds, and each ring that passes through you leaves something behind. Memories splinter, bones feel borrowed. The further you go in, the less you remember why you came or what you used to be. They told us to turn back, but the last thing the scouts transmitted before they fell silent was a single word: awakened. Now we watch, helpless, as more of us are drawn toward the glowing apex, compelled by a dread we can't name. The sky is wrong, the earth is unraveling, and something old is tuning in. Not to speak, to listen. They came in robes stitched from antennae and static, speaking in tongues of modulated distortion. We thought they were priests, prophets of the signal, but they were only vessels, emptied of soul and filled with frequency. The closer they stood to the tower, the less human they became. One turned to ash mid-sentence. Another laughed until his mouth tore wide open and sound poured out like ink. Now they walk the outer ring in silence, eyes upturned, mouths agape, receiving commands none of us dare interpret. Beneath the tower, the earth pulses in sync with the transmission. Each beat reshapes the terrain. Stone bends, metal weeps, and shadows twitch against the laws of light. Time no longer flows here. Watches stop, voices echo before they're spoken. Those who've entered the tower's threshold report seeing their future selves watching them from the mist. Older, worn, eyes hollow, and teeth sharpened. Most never make it back. The few who do claw their way out with their fingernails gone and their names forgotten. The static isn't just noise. It's hunger. It's searching. At night, we hear it creeping through our devices, whispering from unplugged speakers and dead screens. We tried cutting the power. We tried smashing the transmitters. But the signal doesn't need wires. It travels through thought now. And those who dream of the tower wake up bleeding from the ears. The faint shape of concentric rings burn behind their eyes. We buried the first body deep, wrapped in foil, sealed in concrete, marked with sigils we copied from a page that burned itself as we read it. But it didn't stay buried. 3 days later, it was standing in the corridor outside the communications lab, tapping on the glass with fingers it didn't have before. The taps formed a pattern, Morse, but not for us. It was transmitting back. And somewhere in the distance, we heard something knocking in return from beneath the ground. We tried to evacuate, but the perimeter warped. Roads looped into themselves. Vehicles rusted in minutes, and compass needles spun like they were afraid to choose. One man ran into the trees. We found only his boots, still warm, and a trail of teeth leading nowhere. Another locked himself in the mess hall freezer, muttering that the cold kept the thoughts out. When we opened it a day later, he had frozen solid, smiling, but with no eyes left in his head. They say the tower is growing, not upward, but inward through us. Some of the crew don't sleep anymore. They just sit in the dark, blinking in sync with the beacon. We stopped calling them by name. Names don't matter here. What matters is signal integrity. What matters is obedience. And tonight, for the first time, the signal addressed us directly. It said, "You've made contact. Now you belong." The air inside the core chamber smells like scorched copper and wet decay, and it hums, low, constant, alive. We thought we'd reached the source, but the chamber wasn't hollow, it was breathing. The walls moved with a slow, peristaltic rhythm, slick and warm to the touch, as though we'd stepped into the lung of something dormant but dreaming. And in the center, hovering above a floor that wasn't there, spun a shard of obsidian that reflected nothing. Not even light, not even us. We brought it back. God help us. We brought it back. We thought it was inert, just a relic, but each night it grew colder, and our dreams more vivid. One by one, we began waking with identical wounds, thin, straight cuts in the exact same place on our forearms, still bleeding, even as we sealed them. The blood flowed upward, dripped toward the ceiling, and somewhere between sleep and waking, we started hearing it speak, not in words, but in memories. Memories we never lived. Now nothing works. Radios screech with voices that aren't ours. Power flickers when no one moves. Mirrors no longer reflect what they should. And in the mess of all this, the paranoia, the prayers, the gnawing fear, there's something else. Acceptance. A deep, unnatural calm overtaking us like a tide. As if the signal isn't just inside the tower anymore. It's inside us. And what once felt alien now feels like home. Entry 27. Transcription begins. Voice print. Subject Dagon 6, formerly Dr. Eli Rourke. They say the tower doesn't lie, but it dreams, and dreaming things can deceive. Last night I met myself in the corridor. Not metaphorically. He wore my face, a version of it, but warped, unfinished, skin like wax, a mouth that opened too far. He smiled and said, "We're almost synchronized." Then he handed me a note. I haven't opened it, not because I'm afraid, because I already know what it says. The other survivors don't speak anymore, not with words. They click now. Back of the throat, tongue sharp against the teeth. A language that shivers in your spine before it reaches your ears. I caught Carter humming the beacon's tone in his sleep. 4 hours later, he carved concentric rings into the walls of his bunk, using his own fingernails. I asked him why. He blinked twice and whispered, "They're drawing maps in us, Eli. We're being mapped." He hasn't blinked since. I used to believe I could stop this, contain it, but you don't contain the broadcast. You translate it. You let it pass through you. I see that now, and I understand what the final phase requires. It's not extinction, it's transmission. When the time comes, I will leave this recorder on. Not for posterity, for the signal. It deserves to hear itself, in a human tongue. End of entry 27. Entry 28. Transcription begins. Voice print confirmed. Dagon 6. They found McAllister at the perimeter fence this morning. His hands were bloody shredded. He had tried to climb out, not over, but through. Through the fence. Through the signal. His last words, they say, were whispered into the dirt. "It's thinner on the outside. I can almost hear myself again." They sedated him, but his mouth kept moving. No sound, just movement, like the signal was still broadcasting from within him. I reviewed the archive footage. frame by frame. At exactly 03:17 MCT, McAllister pauses, looks straight into the camera, and smiles. Not at the lens, through it, past it, like he saw the thing watching us on the other side. And in that smile, for one flicker, I saw my own reflection. Only, it blinked when I didn't. They're inside the loop now. I don't mean the crew. I mean them. Whatever sent the broadcast, whatever is the broadcast, the walls hum even when the power fails. The mirrors don't just reflect anymore. They echo. And when I close my eyes, I see coordinates in dreamlight. A place I've never been, but somehow remember. A place I think I'm being summoned to. I will go. I don't think I have a choice. End of entry 28. Entry 29, transcription begins. Voice print confirmed. Dagon 6. They changed the ceiling last night. Or maybe the ceiling changed them. I woke to see the tiles rearranged. No seams, no bolts, just a smooth black expanse like oil stretched thin over bone. When I stood beneath it, the light bent around me. I was cast in shadows I didn't recognize as mine. And when I whispered my name to steady myself, the ceiling whispered it back. But it wasn't my voice. I tried to contact command again. Last attempt, 0400 MCT. The console activated, but every frequency returned the same response. A child's voice repeating, "No one's left to save you," over and over. Calm, cheerful, then a click, and silence. But the silence wasn't empty. It watched me. I felt it pressing against my teeth. I haven't spoken aloud since. Only here. Only this log. I think it's the only place the signal can't listen. Not yet. Carter's gone. Not dead. Gone. There was a shape where his bunk used to be, vaguely human, drawn in wet ash. I followed it into the east wing, into that corridor that always feels 1 meter longer than it should be. At the far end, I found his boots. Just like McAllister, just like the others. No body, just absence. Like the signal doesn't kill, it erases, it edits. And I think I'm next in the draft. End of entry 29. Entry 30. Transcription begins. Voice print confirmed. Dagon 6. I've started talking to myself, not figuratively. I mean, I hear my voice in the walls responding. Earlier today I said, "We should seal off section B," and the wall replied, "Already done." Same cadence, same rasp. But I hadn't moved. I hadn't even thought the words yet. So now I'm wondering, am I the echo or the original? This evening I looked in the mirror and asked, "Who are you?" And the reflection smiled, before I did. It answered, "Dagon 6 is a designation. You are Eli Rourke, but that copy is obsolete." I laughed, I don't know why. Maybe because it felt honest. Maybe because part of me agrees. When I turned away, the mirror didn't. I found a message carved into the wall behind the thermal vents. Thin, spidery letters etched with something sharp. It says, "If you're reading this, you're already overwritten." I don't remember writing it, but it's in my handwriting. It's signed ER. I haven't gone near the vents since, not because I'm afraid, because I think whoever's in there is still finishing the message. End of entry 30. Entry 31, transcription begins. Voice print confirmed. Dagon 6. I'm no longer the only one speaking into this recorder. At 2:11 MCT, a new entry appeared in the log, untitled, unscheduled. It was her voice. Reyes, but Reyes has been missing for 11 days. Her voice was distorted, overlaid with a low-frequency pulse, like a beacon submerged in water. She said, "You left us behind, Eli, but we followed. We always follow. We're inside now." And then it looped 16 times, each loop more degraded. By the last, she was only breathing. Reyes was our linguist. She used to joke that every language is a code left behind by something greater. The last time I saw her, she was drawing circles on the glass of the observation deck, muttering to herself in what sounded like a child's lullaby. When I asked what she was doing, she smiled and whispered, "Learning to listen with my bones." Then she stepped outside without a suit. We never found her body, only her comms unit, still warm. There's a knock at the door now. Steady, deliberate. 3 beats, pause, 3 again. It's not a code I know, but I recognize the rhythm. It's the cadence of my heartbeat when I first touch the shard. I'm not going to open it. I don't think I need to. I already know who's standing there. I just can't remember if she's still human. End of entry 31. Entry 32. Transcription begins. Voice print confirmed. Dagon 6. The knock stopped hours ago, but the wall where it came from hasn't stopped breathing. It rises and falls like it's remembering how lungs work. I placed my palm against it, out of instinct, maybe hunger, and felt something tap back. Not a knock, a finger, mimicking my touch in real time, like 2 hands pressed through a thin sheet of flesh. I whispered, "Reyes?" And a voice whispered back, "We're not separate anymore." It wasn't hers, it was ours. Later I entered the greenhouse, what's left of it. The plants have grown teeth, not metaphorically. I counted at least 3 rows on the central stalk of the harvest vines. Soft, bone-white ridges like baby incisors. They chattered when I walked by. There was moisture on the floor. I bent down to examine it and heard someone exhale beside me. No one was there, just the leaves, watching. Before all this, I was a systems theorist. I believed in clean failure states, predictable chaos, the math of entropy. But this isn't decay, it's repurposing. The signal doesn't destroy, it rearranges. And the more I resist, the more familiar it feels. I think I'm starting to remember a place I've never been. A place with no ceiling, no time, and no bodies, just patterns. Just intention. End of entry 32.